Welcome to IRAQI Dinar News, where you receive real and authentic updates about the IRAQI dinar. If you want to stay informed with moment-by-moment developments, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Today we're going to take a calm, analytical look at a topic that is once again circulating among IRAQI dinar followers. The pattern Iraq has historically followed before making adjustments to its foreign exchange policy. Specifically, we're examining how actions taken by the Central Bank of Iraq, also known as the Central Bank of Iraq, in 2015, 2020, and 2023 compared to what is happening right now. Historically, before major exchange rate adjustments, Iraq implemented a series of tightening measures. These included restricting foreign transfers, limiting who could send money abroad, capping transaction amounts, and specifying which banks were authorized to process such transfers. Additionally, authorities required banks to use official electronic platforms and took action against non-compliant institutions. Dollar outflows were reduced, and compliance standards were elevated. The key question for today is whether the repetition of these measures necessarily signals an imminent exchange rate move, or whether they reflect broader structural reforms within Iraq's financial system. To understand the present situation, we first need to revisit the past. In 2015, Iraq was facing significant fiscal pressure due to low oil prices and the costs associated with internal security challenges. Currency pressures increased, and authorities had to stabilize the exchange market. In 2020, during the global economic shock caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, Iraq again faced declining oil revenues and widening fiscal deficits. The government ultimately adjusted the exchange rate to relieve budget stress. In 2023, exchange market instability and widening spreads between the official and parallel market rates prompted further policy adjustments and tighter currency controls. In each of those periods, foreign exchange management became stricter before changes were announced. However, it is important to emphasize that these tightening measures served multiple purposes. They were not solely about preparing for a rate change. They were also about combating illicit dollar outflows, addressing compliance concerns raised by international financial institutions, and aligning Iraq's banking sector with global anti-money laundering standards. Today, we are seeing similar actions from the Central Bank of Iraq. Foreign transfer channels are being monitored more closely. Certain banks face increased scrutiny and, in some cases, restrictions. The dollar auction system, which has long been a central mechanism for supplying US dollars into Iraq's economy, has undergone structural adjustments. Digital platforms are being enforced to improve transparency. Non-compliant institutions risk suspension or exclusion from foreign currency operations. These developments reflect a clear pattern. Iraq is tightening control over its currency ecosystem. But what does that actually mean? In the short term, tighter controls typically aim to stabilize the exchange rate and reduce volatility between the official rate and the parallel market rate. When dollar outflows are reduced, pressure on the domestic currency can ease. By restricting unauthorized transfers and ensuring that only compliant banks participate in currency auctions, the central bank seeks to protect foreign reserves and maintain confidence in monetary policy. From a liquidity perspective, tightening measures can initially create stress within the private sector. Importers, businesses, and individuals who rely on foreign transfers may face delays or additional documentation requirements. This can temporarily widen spreads in the parallel market. However, if enforcement is effective and transparent, the long-term result can be a more stable and credible financial system. Now, for IRAQI dinar followers, the central issue is whether this pattern automatically leads to an exchange rate revaluation. It is essential to approach this question with caution. While historical precedent shows that tightening measures preceded past adjustments, correlation does not guarantee repetition. Policymakers implement currency controls for various reasons beyond preparing for a rate shift. At present, Iraq's economy is in a different position compared to 2020. Oil revenues have stabilized relative to pandemic lows, foreign reserves remain substantial, and fiscal planning has become more structured. The central bank's recent actions appear strongly connected to compliance alignment with international financial frameworks, particularly regarding cross-border dollar flows. This is significant because Iraq's integration into the global financial system requires adherence to strict regulatory standards. If authorities are prioritizing monetary sovereignty and reducing dependency on informal dollar markets, tightening controls is a logical step regardless of exchange rate intentions. Strengthening the dinar's domestic role, increasing transparency, and curbing arbitrage opportunities are structural goals that extend beyond short-term exchange rate speculation. In the short term, these measures may help narrow the gap between official and parallel exchange rates. That alone can improve market confidence. When businesses trust the official rate, speculative demand decreases. Reduced speculation lowers volatility. Stability in turn supports investment and trade planning. Over the longer term, consistent enforcement and modernization of Iraq's banking infrastructure could improve credit access, attract foreign investment, and enhance economic diversification. Investors and international partners look for regulatory clarity and central bank independence. Demonstrating firm control over currency channels sends a message of institutional maturity. However, it is equally important to recognize that tightening currency controls can slow economic activity if implemented too aggressively. If access to foreign currency becomes overly restrictive, trade flows may contract. Policymakers must balance control with economic flexibility. Sustainable monetary reform requires careful sequencing, not sudden shocks. For IQD followers, the responsible takeaway is this: tightening currency management is a meaningful development. It reflects active monetary policy. It shows that the central bank is focused on defending the value of the dinar and protecting foreign reserves. But it does not automatically confirm that a major exchange rate change is imminent. Exchange rate decisions depend on multiple factors, including inflation trends, fiscal policy, oil revenue stability, foreign reserve levels, and geopolitical considerations. Central banks typically adjust rates when macroeconomic conditions justify the move, not simply because currency controls are tightened. In fact, in some cases, stronger currency controls are implemented precisely to avoid having to adjust the exchange rate. By stabilizing outflows and improving compliance, the bank can defend the existing rate structure more effectively. From a macroeconomic standpoint, Iraq's broader reform agenda includes digital banking expansion, customs modernization, and reducing reliance on cash transactions. Currency tightening fits within that broader reform framework. Strengthening internal financial controls improves transparency, which supports long-term economic credibility. For viewers tracking the Iraqi dinar, patience and realism remain essential. Monetary reform is rarely dramatic. Often it unfolds quietly through regulatory adjustments, banking compliance measures, and incremental policy changes. When major exchange decisions are made, they are typically announced formally and implemented with clear communication. It is also worth noting that sudden, unannounced exchange rate shocks can create instability. Modern central banking emphasizes predictability and controlled transitions. While past adjustments may have appeared abrupt to the public, they were preceded by internal preparation and economic justification. As of now, the tightening measures we are observing indicate discipline, not necessarily revaluation. They show an active central bank working to maintain currency integrity. That is positive for long-term economic health. In summary, yes, historically Iraq tightened foreign transfers, enforced official banking platforms, and reduced dollar outflows before certain exchange rate adjustments in 2015, 2020, and 2023. And yes, similar actions are happening today. But responsible analysis requires distinguishing between structural reform and speculative expectation. The presence of one does not guarantee the other. Short term, we may see continued stabilization efforts and gradual narrowing of exchange spreads. Long term, stronger monetary control and regulatory enforcement could strengthen Iraq's financial credibility and support sustainable economic growth. For IQD followers, this means monitoring official statements, fiscal performance, and reserve data rather than relying solely on pattern comparisons. Thank you for watching Iraqi Dinar News. If you value responsible, factual, and balanced updates about the Iraqi dinar and Iraq's economy, make sure to subscribe to the channel and like the video. And as always, this content is for informational purposes only and should not be considered financial advice.